My name is Harper Quinn. 7 years ago, I walked out of my family's house in Knoxville, Tennessee, with nothing but a duffel bag, a badge stripped of authority, and a silence so thick it buried everything I could have said. Back then, I was a patrol officer, good at what I did, maybe too good. I dug into a corruption tip no one wanted to believe. A month later, I was implicated in a paperwork fraud I didn't even file. If you've ever taken the fall for someone else's lie, hit that like button. Your truth deserves to be seen. My sister Evelyn said she could help. She had connections, lawyers, image advisors, but her help came with a deal step back, say, nothing, take the fall quietly. I did. For them, for the family who taught me that silence was a currency and image was everything. And in return, they cut me off every call unanswered, every letter returned. My badge was reinstated eventually, but my place at the dinner table never was. Now I work under the Office of Federal Compliance, specializing in financial forensics, tasked with sniffing out dirty money flowing through clean development projects. Not exactly the patrol beat, but it keeps me sharp, keeps me honest. Today's case landed on my desk like any other docket number 77, 432. Subject, Reynard Development Corporation. Suspected misuse of public grant funds allocated for Greenway Housing Project. Standard stuff. Except, Reynard Development is owned by my family, chaired by my father, CFO Evelyn Quinn. Funny how things circle back. At 7:45 a.m., I was standing outside the county civic complex, steel badge on my hip blazer, zipped up, no visible scars, just a clipboard, a plain coffee, and a calm I hadn't earned but needed to fake. Inside room 4B was being set up for a closed-door session, the pretrial reconciliation hearing, and they had no idea who'd be sitting across from them. I didn't tell the agency this was personal. Didn't have to. I followed protocol. The numbers matched the pattern. The files from the community reinvestment grant showed a triple billed invoices, shadow vendors, and routing inconsistencies that formed a spiderweb I knew too well. Evelyn's signature was on at least 4 of the authorizations. Still, I didn't plan to speak today. Just observe, compile, document until I saw her. My mother standing outside the chamber in a tailored gray dress, pearl earrings, her hair pinned the same way. She wore it to every holiday dinner. Her face lit up when she saw me for half a second. Then it froze. Harper. She asked the name like a foreign object in her mouth. You're here, I'm assigned, I replied. To this? She looked around confused. This isn't your kind of work. What are you doing here? I'm liaison for the federal side of the audit, I said flatly. I'll be present for today's discussion. Her eyes darted. Does your father know? He will. Before she could answer, the door opened behind us. Evelyn emerged in full corporate armor silk blouse, navy pencil skirt, a leather portfolio in hand. She was always poised, even her anger, wore makeup. Mom, I told you to wait inside. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw me. Her smile was brief and tight. Well, this is a surprise, is it? I asked. I wasn't told you were on the case. You weren't supposed to be. She held my gaze jaw ticking just once. Harper, let's talk. Privately. I don't think that's necessary. I think it is. She insisted, lowering her voice. Whatever this is, whatever grudge you've decided to nurse, it doesn't belong in a legal forum. It's not a grudge, I replied. It's a job. The clerk called everyone in. Inside the hearing room, the mood shifted. Lawyers from both sides arranged their papers. The facilitator, Judge Pearson, nodded at me. He was retired but retained for compliance review. He'd seen my badge, knew my clearance. My father was already seated. When he saw me, he didn't react. Not anger, not warmth, just that corporate mask I'd known since I was old enough to write my own name. Thank you all for coming, Pearson began. This hearing is to establish the scope of discovery for Case 77, 432. At the request of the federal oversight body, a liaison officer has been assigned to co-monitor these proceedings. He looked directly at me. Detective Quinn, please identify yourself for the record. I stood smoothing the crease in my jacket. Harper Quinn, Liaison Officer, Federal Compliance Task Force, Badge 31764. There was a beat of silence. My father blinked, then shifted in his chair. My mother's hands went still over her purse. Evelyn's lips pressed into a hard line. No one spoke. So I did. My role here is simple. I am not the prosecutor. I'm not the judge. But I am tasked with ensuring the integrity of any data presented here today, including financial records, communications, and grant documentation related to the Greenway Housing Project. Pearson nodded. Thank you. Let's proceed. The first 20 minutes passed in a blur of opening statements and procedural lingo. I didn't speak again, just took notes. But the temperature in the room had changed. They didn't expect me. And more importantly, they didn't prepare for me. At recess, I stepped out for air. The hallway was quiet, cool. I sipped the last of my coffee, thinking back to the voicemail Evelyn left me 6 years ago. Take the deal. You'll be protecting the family. That's what we do. She wasn't wrong. Back then, I thought protecting them meant absorbing the blow. Now I realize it means standing in front of the truth and refusing to look away. Tomorrow, I submit the full forensic report. Tonight, I sit in silence watching the sun pour through government-grade windows, knowing that the past isn't something you run from. Sometimes, you walk right into it, eyes wide open. The next morning, I arrived 30 minutes early. Federal hearings rarely started on time, but I wanted the room before they did the silence before the noise. Room 4B smelled like recycled air and paper briefs. I set my laptop at the center desk, organized the financial summaries, and made sure the USB drive extracted from a badge hidden in my grandfather's old keepsake was safely tucked into my blazer pocket. It contained the original ledger, the one Evelyn swore never existed. Her signature was on every false allocation. Outside, I heard heels clicking down the hallway. Evelyn walked in first punctual and calm, wearing that same tailored confidence I remembered from childhood, always just a little too perfect. Behind her, our father entered, holding a leather portfolio. My mother wasn't there yet, but her absence made the air feel tighter, not looser. Evelyn's eyes scanned the room, then landed on me. Early start, she asked with a casual smile. Still a morning person, I see. I didn't respond. She sat across the table, unzipped her folio, and laid out her documents like a battlefield map. Her hands were steady. She always thrived in performance settings, depositions, board meetings, press conferences. But this wasn't her turf anymore. I was up late, she added, voice sweet, reviewing files. You know how it is trying to keep everything neat before the government starts snooping? You mean before someone exposes it, I replied. Her jaw twitched. You really think this is about the truth? Harper, she asked, quietly. Or are you just finally enjoying having leverage over us? I'm not here for leverage, I said. I'm here for accuracy. A knock on the glass door broke the moment. Judge Pearson entered, followed by 2 auditors from the state office and a compliance officer from the grant board. No more rehearsal. No more sisterly banter dressed in civility. The hearing resumed. I let them go through their motions first. Evelyn listing project milestones. My father citing delays. In city, permits their legal counsel asserting full compliance. I waited. At 9:42 a.m., Pearson turned to me. Detective Quinn, I believe you had documents to present. I nodded. I plugged in the USB. The projector flickered to life, displaying itemized spending records, side by side, official report versus hidden account. The room went still. I pointed to a row labeled Community Housing Subcontractor Phase 2. Evelyn had claimed it went to a concrete supplier, but the routing number traced to an offshore LLC tied to an account registered under a shell firm, owned by her former fiancé. The money trail was unmistakable. Would you care to explain this discrepancy? I asked. Evelyn leaned forward. Those records are unofficial, stolen even. This isn't proper protocol. Chain of custody is intact, I interrupted. This drive was recovered from a personal item left to me by Charles Quinn, your grandfather. He retained duplicate records before your office's streamlined financial oversight. I glanced at Pearson. All data has been verified through independent checksum verification, chain matches, internal timestamp logs from the original grant server. Evelyn's voice grew sharper. You're not a federal agent? No, I said. I'm worse. I'm family with clearance. My father finally spoke. Enough. This isn't a witch hunt. It's not a hunt, sir, I said. It's a post-mortem. If that line made your heart stop for a second, share this story. Some truths deserve witnesses. The silence that followed was heavier than anger. It was recognition. For years, they saw me as the black mark, the cautionary tale, the badge that got tossed. But here, I was not just standing commanding. Pearson cleared his throat. Due to the new evidence, I'm issuing a recess until the Oversight Committee can cross-examine these materials. The room emptied in slow motion. My father walked out stiffly. Evelyn didn't. She waited until we were alone. You think this redeems you, she hissed. You think showing up with a flash drive makes you the good one again? I stared at her. I was never the bad one, Evelyn. You just needed me to look like it. She laughed. Oh, don't be dramatic. You made mistakes. I followed protocol, I replied. You handed me a file, marked emergency review, and told me to sign. You knew what was in it. She leaned in. And you didn't read it. No, I said, because I trusted you. Her face flickered just slightly, and there it was, the first crack. Do you know what it was like for me? I added, voice quiet now. To lose everything overnight. My badge, my rank, my credibility. I spent 3 years rebuilding from scratch, and you never once called. Her posture stiffened. We thought you needed space. No, I corrected. You needed me silent. She looked away, then softer than I expected. She said Dad didn't want to believe the audit could touch us. I told him it could. I told him. She stopped. He thinks I'm still protecting the company. You are, I said, at the expense of the truth. She turned back toward the conference room, but paused at the door. If you move forward, she said, they'll press charges. On me, maybe on him too. You really want that? I didn't answer, because that wasn't the question I was asking myself. The real question was, does the truth deserve mercy? Later that afternoon, I visited a place I hadn't seen in years. The old East Haven Park where my grandfather used to take me for Saturday chess. The benches were still crooked, the swings creaked, and the community center across the field looked like it hadn't been painted in a decade. Inside, a girl no older than 10 was helping an elderly man stack books into donation bins. She glanced at my badge and whispered something to him. The man turned. It was Sam, my grandfather's former assistant. Didn't expect you, he said. I didn't expect you'd still be here. He chuckled. We stick around, some of us. I handed him a printed copy of the report. Grandpa's files. They saved this investigation. He smiled, but there was sadness behind it. He told me once, Sam said, that if Evelyn ever forgot what the foundation was built on, it'd be up to you to remind her. I stared at the kids playing outside the center, some chasing soccer balls, some sharing snacks. Not a single one cared about corporate ledgers or offshore accounts. But they would care if that housing project collapsed, if those grants disappeared into sand. Did he really say that? I asked. Sam nodded, word for word. I stood quietly for a while, then said, "Do me a favor. Make copies of that USB. You planning to go public?" I looked out across the field. "No," I said. "I'm planning to make it permanent." By Thursday morning, the storm had fully settled over Reynard Development. Whispers were circulating across internal boards. Rumors bloomed inside clean lobbies and corner offices. Phrases like federal oversight, improper fund allocation, and unauthorized disbursement replaced the usual buzzwords. Evelyn hadn't shown up at headquarters. My father stopped answering press inquiries altogether. But I wasn't at headquarters. I was at the Eastfield District Clerk's office filing Form 66B under Provisional Ethics Appeal to freeze access to the company's charitable assets. Not because I wanted to destroy Reynard Development, because I needed to protect the one piece of it that mattered, the Charles Quinn Foundation. That foundation was my grandfather's life's work, a scholarship and community grant fund buried under PR noise. And if I didn't move now, Evelyn would liquidate it to pay legal fees before a judge ever saw the audit. At 10:12 a.m., the clerk handed me a stamped copy. "Done," she said. "You'll need an in-person hearing to present." Tomorrow, she looked over her calendar. Earliest is 2 p.m. Friday. That gave me 24 hours. Back at my apartment, I opened my grandfather's ledger. There in his blocky handwriting was a list titled, "If Harper ever needs it." No embellishment, just a name address and a note Sam has a copy. Evelyn doesn't know. I stared at the last line, "Do not let them turn this into a marketing slogan." He knew. He always knew. That night my phone buzzed, unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to Harper. "It's Mom. I know we're not. I know things are tense, but we didn't know you were coming back. Your sister's not handling this well. I think we should talk. Please call me." It wasn't guilt, it was fear. They were realizing I wouldn't blink first. The next morning, I met with an attorney pro bono from a civic org I'd helped during my field years. She reviewed the documents, especially the original articles of incorporation of the Quinn Foundation. "There's a loophole," she said. "Your grandfather included a dormant clause giving discretionary power to the descendant most engaged in public service if the foundation was at risk. That's not enforceable." She smiled. "It is if we file a motion and no one contests." I stared at her. "You think Evelyn won't contest?" "She can try," she said, "but she'd have to argue on record that her personal use of nonprofit funds wasn't misuse, just creative direction. That's a stretch." By 2 p.m., I walked into courtroom B6, small, undecorated, windowless, just the way truth likes it. Evelyn was already there. She didn't speak. Neither did I. At 2:07 p.m., the judge entered. We stood. The hearing was short by legal standards. Evidence submitted. Chain of custody verified. Sam's affidavit presented, citing my grandfather's wishes. Evelyn's lawyer attempted one rebuttal. The judge stopped her mid-sentence. "Miss Quinn," he said, "you stand here asking to assume temporary oversight of a community foundation with a 30-year history. You have a badge, a clearance file, and a signed letter from the man who built it. Tell me why." Now I stood, straight, calm. Because for years I said I thought reclaiming what I lost meant proving someone else wrong. But it doesn't. It means doing what's right even when nobody claps, even when no one apologizes. He nodded. Motion approved. That evening, Evelyn showed up at my apartment unannounced. She didn't knock like family, she buzzed like a stranger. I let her up. She didn't wait for permission to speak. "You filed without warning. You mean without asking? I said. Her voice rose. Do you understand what you've done? Yes, I said. I preserved the only part of this family that meant anything. She paced. You embarrassed Dad, the board, the city council's called us 3 times since yesterday. You used Grandpa's fund to pay for a renovation on your lake house. She stopped pacing. Her face cracked for the first time. I was drowning Harper, she said. After he died, no one wanted to deal with the mess. I kept things moving. You buried everything that didn't fit the story. I didn't know how else to survive, she said. Survive, I snapped. You framed your sister, took her name off every family document, let the whole city believe she was a disgrace. You didn't survive, Evelyn. You erased. The silence that followed was deafening. Then softly, I was jealous of you, she admitted. Back then, you were brave. People liked you without trying. Dad said you'd waste it. I believed him. I thought, if I could just stay perfect, maybe I'd matter more. I exhaled slowly. You mattered. But you didn't need to bury me to prove it. She sat down. Something between guilt and exhaustion folded her frame. I don't expect forgiveness, she said, but I needed you to know I remember everything. I didn't reply, because remembering doesn't undo, but maybe it begins. Subscribe if you believe healing doesn't start with an apology. It starts with truth. Later that night, I was going through the foundation's paperwork when I found a note paper-clipped to the last page of the old annual report, handwritten, grandfather's ink. Some things are lost, others are returned. The rest must be rebuilt by those brave enough to try again. It wasn't a directive. It was permission, not to go back, but to go forward. The next morning, I stood in front of the city's Community Renewal Committee, presenting a full proposal to relaunch the Charles Quinn Foundation as an independent nonprofit under state oversight with new bylaws, youth voting rights, and a rotating civic advisory panel. They approved it on the spot. Applause broke out, not loud, but real. I walked out to a soft breeze and the smell of food trucks parked by the civic square. A voice called from behind me. Detective Quinn. I turned. It was one of the junior auditors from the first hearing, a nervous kid with a clipboard too big for his arm. Just wanted to say, he stammered, what you did in that room was kind of legendary. I smiled. Not because I needed it, but because someone saw. At home, I filed the last piece of paper in a clean labeled folder, Foundation Recovered Phase 1. Then closed the laptop. Outside my window, the sun dropped behind the skyline. Inside, peace didn't feel loud or victorious. It just settled. I didn't need my sister to apologize again. I didn't need my father to say he was proud. I didn't need my mother to finally see me, because now the girl who once begged for approval no longer existed. And the woman who replaced her, she didn't beg, she built. The morning of the public board hearing was still and overcast. One of those southern skies that looked like it couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or suffocate. Reynard Development's executive board was being summoned under an emergency oversight request, prompted by the evidence I'd submitted through the foundation filing. I arrived early, again, not because I wanted to make an entrance, but because I wanted to claim the silence before they filled it with spin. The hearing was held inside a government annex, third-floor wood-paneled microphones, older than most of the interns running the cameras. Local press was invited. Legal counsel from the grant board was present. A state senator had even RSVP'd at the last minute. This wasn't just damage control anymore. It was exposure. I sat at the far left of the table. Plain suit badge clipped to my belt. No fanfare. Just facts. Just the record. They arrived at 9:02. My father, in a dark navy suit jaw, set like granite. Evelyn, perfect as always, but with a tightness in her face I hadn't seen since we were kids, and she got caught copying a book report. My mother came to, sitting quietly behind them in the gallery. It was the first time I'd seen her since the voicemail. The chair of the committee, a woman named Rhonda James, opened with protocol, introduced the session, confirmed the presence of the media. Then she turned toward me. Detective Quinn, would you like to begin with your report? I stood. The projection screen lit up behind me. This I began as a line-by-line comparison of Reynard Development's stated spending on the Greenway housing project and the actual disbursements pulled from recovered internal backups and external vendor records. A long pause. I clicked. Slide 1-3 invoices to a now defunct subcontractor, each for the same job, same date, billed 3 times. Slide 2A personal transaction from the Foundation's discretionary fund. $14, $275 for what was labeled community technology enhancements, but was actually an in-home media room install at Evelyn's Lake House. Slide 3, a flowchart of fund redirection where nonprofit grants were absorbed into holding accounts under Shell, LLCs, and reinvested back into luxury builds not listed under public record. There were gasps in the gallery. I didn't react. I turned toward the panel. Every piece of this data has been verified through third-party validation. I have submitted affidavits from the former finance assistant, as well as a signed memo from Charles Quinn, outlining concerns regarding his granddaughter's financial discretion. Rhonda cleared her throat. And to clarify, you are that granddaughter's sister. Yes, ma'am. Evelyn finally stood. May I speak? You, May Rhonda said. Evelyn walked to the center podium. I won't dispute the numbers, she began. They're accurate, but I will dispute the narrative. The foundation was failing. After my grandfather's death, no one stepped in to manage the grants. I did what I had to do to keep things alive. You used public funds for private enrichment, Rhonda said flatly. I used them to keep the company from crumbling, Evelyn snapped. You falsified invoices I added. I made decisions she countered, eyes locking with mine. Something you walked away from, Harper? And there it was, the resentment, still alive, still burning. I didn't walk away, I said. You pushed me out. And when I stayed quiet, you wrote me out of the family's history like I was a liability. You were a liability, she shot back. You were reckless. You got suspended. I stepped forward. I took a hit to protect the people in this room. You let me drown so your stock valuation wouldn't drop. The silence after that was thick. Evelyn looked away. Rhonda folded her hands. This isn't a family dispute. This is a civic investigation. Based on this evidence, we are forwarding full findings to the district attorney and recommending an immediate independent audit. Gasps again. From behind, I heard my mother whisper something under her breath. The chair continued. However, before we adjourn, there is one more matter on the agenda. Detective Quinn has submitted a request for formal appointment as provisional director of the Charles Quinn Foundation under Clause 7 of the Charter. My father finally spoke. That clause was ceremonial. No, sir, I replied. It was conditional. He stared at me. I could see it. The moment realization cracked through his pride. Not because of the data, not because of the law, because I had done it without him, without needing him. Rhonda turned to me again. You understand, detective, that this position is unpaid, full of scrutiny, and largely thankless. I smiled. Yes, ma'am, that's the point. The vote passed unanimously. Outside, cameras waited. I gave no statement. I wasn't here to become a symbol. I was here to reclaim a foundation and a truth no one could overwrite anymore. My mother caught up to me by the steps. She looked smaller than I remembered. You didn't have to humiliate them, she said softly. I didn't, I replied. I just stopped protecting what shouldn't be protected. She nodded, once eyes misty. I didn't know about the lake house, she said. I thought. We thought you were just angry. I was, I admitted, but not anymore. What are you now? Done, I said, but not bitter. She hesitated, then did something I didn't expect. She hugged me, no words, just arms. It didn't undo anything. But maybe that wasn't the point. Later that night, I sat at the edge of my grandfather's old desk, the same one he used when he drafted every annual report with pen and calculator. I opened the top drawer and found a letter addressed to no one. But I knew it was for me. If you're reading this, it means someone finally stood up. I hope it's you. And if it is, you don't owe anyone a clean ending, just an honest one. I folded the letter, placed it back. Outside, the window lights from the Eastfield Youth Center flickered on, powered by the first redirected funds from the foundation. Kids were already out there, playing under lights they didn't know were once at risk. That was the victory, not the vote, not the apology, not the headlines that would surely come. But this, a light turned back on, and no one even noticed. It had almost gone out. 6 months later, the office of the newly restructured Charles Quinn Foundation sat in a modest second-floor suite overlooking Eastfield Park. No glass walls, no marble floors, just wood desks, open windows, and the sound of kids laughing in the field below. My title on the letterhead read, Interim Director. I'd declined the permanent post. Not because I didn't believe in the mission, but because I knew when to let something go once it could walk on its own. The foundation had tripled its outreach grants since the transition. The after-school program Evelyn used to list as a PR line item now had real classrooms, real instructors, real outcomes, and real stories. Like the girl who built her first website last week, or the kid who spoke his first full sentence at the speech clinic. Names I didn't need to remember to know they mattered. That morning, I was sorting paper grant forms when someone knocked on the door. It creaked open. My father stepped in. He was carrying a frame. He didn't speak right away, just walked across the room, placed the frame on my desk, and stood back. I looked down. It was a clipped magazine article from a local civic journal, The Quiet Rebuilder, Harper Quinn, and the Foundation's Second Life. My picture was in it, half turned talking to a kid, no badge in sight. Just me, unguarded. I kept a copy in my office, he said finally. Didn't know if you'd want one. I looked up at him. You framed it? He nodded. I waited for the punchline. For the usual, it's good optics, or the board liked it. But he didn't add anything. Just let the silence breathe. Why, now, I asked. He exhaled through his nose. Because I've spent a lifetime deciding what mattered based on how clean it looked on paper. And you kept doing the work, even when no one was watching. That used to be a flaw, I said. He nodded slowly. Maybe that was the problem. We stood like that father and daughter, two strangers, trying to see each other clearly through years of distortion. He cleared his throat. I didn't understand your choices, I thought. Maybe you'd come back to the company someday. I did come back, I said, just not to follow you. That landed. He didn't flinch, didn't protest. Instead, he extended his hand. No flourish, no speech, just palm up, an offering. I shook it. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like a performance. That weekend, I hosted dinner at my place. It wasn't formal. Just roasted vegetables, grilled salmon, and a bottle of wine I actually liked. My mother arrived first, holding a pie wrapped in a dish towel like it was sacred cargo. Still your favorite, right? She asked as she set it down. Depends, I said. Is it apple or apology? She smiled, a real one this time. It's both. We set the table together like we used to before birthdays. Her movements were slower now, but steadier. We didn't fill the space with small talk. Just let the clinking of dishes and the scent of cinnamon do the speaking. Evelyn came next. She looked different, like someone had turned down the volume on her. Less polished, but more present. She handed me a small box. Don't open it yet. I raised an eyebrow. She shrugged. It's not dramatic, just overdue. Logan, her husband, didn't come. They were taking some space, she'd said. I didn't ask. After dinner, we sat around the table drinking coffee, everyone in a kind of tentative peace. No big speeches, no orchestrated forgiveness. Just forks scraping pie plates and quiet questions like, how's the youth center expansion? When do you meet with the city council? You ever think about running for office? That last one made me laugh out loud. I shook my head. I'd rather be behind the scenes. Besides, I like truth better than applause. My mother chuckled softly. You get that from your grandfather. Maybe I did. Maybe he planted something in me that survived every attempt to uproot it. Later, Evelyn pulled me aside in the hallway. She handed me the box. I opened it. Inside was a police badge. Mine. The original one. Not the reissued one I received after the suspension, but the actual one I turned in 7 years ago. I kept it, she said. I don't know why. Maybe to remember what I cost you. I stared at the numbers engraved beneath the seal. Badge 3, 1764. I don't want it back, I said. She looked startled. Why not? Because I'm not that version of me anymore, I said. But I'll keep it, so I never forget what it took to become this one. She nodded, slowly. Then you were right about the foundation, about all of it. I didn't need to be right, I said. I needed you to stop pretending I was wrong. The next day, I walked through Eastfield Park as the youth clinic opened. Kids were running toward the lot with backpacks, snacks, and boundless questions. One of them, a girl named Layla, ran up to me clutching a drawing. It's you, she said, handing it over. It was a stick figure with a big heart on the chest, and the words, Miss H. the Brave. I knelt down. What made you draw that? You tell the truth even when it's scary, she said. That's what brave means. I smiled. Then I'll try to keep earning the name. She nodded, then ran off. I watched her disappear into the building, into a future she didn't know had almost been erased. And I felt something settle inside me. Not closure, but clarity. At home that night, I placed the old badge in a shadow box next to the article my father gave me and the note my grandfather left. Not as trophies, but as proof that the quietest victories are sometimes the most complete. I used to believe that justice meant forcing people to see you. Now I know it means seeing yourself and refusing to disappear even when they look away. They once told me I'd thrown away my future. Turns out, I was just building one they couldn't imagine. And now, when I walk into rooms that once dismissed me, I don't need to speak loudly. Because presence is a language of its own, and I've learned to speak it fluently. Watch more stories like this in the description below. And if this one moved, you leave a comment. Your voice matters here.